Billy is in charge today. Mike is allegedly someone who is taking a step back. No Stugotz today. And Billy, you didn't tell me we were on the air. You didn't seem to know we were on the air.
Well,
my microphone went on. The video went on.
Yeah.
And the first act of business, and Billy in charge, is no one has told me we're live.
Well, I mean, I got 8 minutes notice that I was in charge today. But what happened was I was getting a countdown in my headset from video that I thought everyone was getting. I wasn't told that I had to repeat that countdown to everyone. So
okay.
Yeah, we're here, though. We're
Regardless,
fine. Let's just keep it. Yeah,
that's right. A rough and rugged
train
start.
on the tracks.
That's right.
No one even knew, Dan.
So,
we
Billy,
could have played it off.
When I give a countdown to everybody, you never found that weird?
Well, I didn't know that Jason was giving you a countdown in your headset, you know?
Yeah.
You like to
That's a
talk,
good
too,
point,
so I just thought you liked
actually.
being the countdown person.
We also are not really sure who's hearing what through the headsets sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a whole new system. A
Yeah.
whole new world.
Jazz is here today.
She's coming in singing, and I know that she is obsessed, as all of us are obsessed, with this submersive story because it seems like an uncommon horror. And I did not let Billy unspool a thought that he had yesterday because the fear of it is so large that I don't want to just turn this immediately into content without regard for what these people are experiencing if they're still alive. But it's fascinating for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is who chooses to do this when this is the risk. None of us would choose to do this if we knew that this was the risk. But Billy was saying yesterday, you're a billionaire. You've won at life.
Just do nothing.
Why would you risk it by going to see a famous shipwreck?
Well, he also went to space not too long ago. Like, there's plenty of things to do on Earth. Why do you have to be going into space and undersea? Like, I don't get it. Is that CBS News video, like, real? Like, that's the actual, like, vessel that he was in that is, like...
It's 21 feet long, and there's no room to sit down, really.
How do they fit 5 people in
It's
there?
smaller than the shipping container, the original shipping container.
But it's controlled by a remote control. It has an elevator button, which is useless because there's no elevator
You're
shaft.
going 2 miles down into the sea, and I've read some about this. I read a book one time about what it's like to get the bends. All scuba stuff scares me because
Was it David McCullough's Brooklyn Bridge biography?
it was a sunken ship book off of, I don't remember the name of it. I'll have to look it up. It's one of the best books I've read, but I read it 20 years
See,
ago.
that's what rich people do. They read books about experiences.
thought
They
you were gonna say
don't
they-
actually do those things.
The Apple
What's
VR
the
headset's
need?
$3,500. Get that and go down to the Titanic.
Exactly
Very
right.
Simple.
You're looking through like a little tiny like window that's like not even. It's smaller than a window on an airplane. What's the point of that?
Let me explain this. So you go 2 miles down into the sea to see the most historic shipwreck. People are fascinated by shipwrecks, and they also think of the sea being even more unexplored somehow than space. You go down in a material that can withstand huge amount of pressure, but you're not going to really be able to open anything in a panic from inside of the vessel because you're trapped in what Cody was calling yesterday a nautical casket, a coffin, if something goes wrong. And we're reading now that while this isn't experimental, you have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and sign a waiver that on the first sheet says death 3 different times because they're sending you down with a remote control waiver to go see a shipwreck in a vessel that's 21 feet. The bathroom is very small and useless. There are no real seats. And it seems like a 2.5-hour horror to just drop to the bottom of the sea. That's what those people are trapped in with what now is less than 24 hours of breathable air.
What if the window's fogged? Like you go down there for nothing. Like if you go scuba diving, you have to do that thing where like you take off your mask and you spit in it and then you go like this and then you have to put it up against your face and then water gets in and you have to blow out with your nose so that the water shoots out the side. It's like a whole thing. But you can't do that.
They
at
might
the
have the
submarine.
defogger spray from
That
Sunglass
doesn't
Hut.
work. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Billy is right, though. It's one window, right?
He's right.
It's a tiny porthole. This company also, there's been evidence that has come out now since this happened that they've been sued by one person who was a whistleblower who knew that this, wasn't safe, and they tried to fire him, and then he was like, this is not safe, and I don't want to take manned crews down there. There's been other lawsuits of people that have paid for the trip that didn't get to go on the trip, which, by the way, I would be pretty relieved if I were that guy today. I'd be like, you know what? it's all good. They can keep my money. I think it's one of those things where most people can't fathom having $250,000 to spend on something so reckless and just doesn't seem to have a pretty big payoff for anyone. But you do feel bad because how just like horrible the thought is of being trapped in this thing. But I think where like the ire comes in is for this company who is charging these people absorbent amounts of money for something that is just not safe by any standard. It is just not a safe vessel.
Evidently, James Cameron was the only one who had been to these depths experimentally before this particular project began, that has been in business for years and made a lot of money for years. And now one would assume the business is over. One would assume that what is going...
There's always a comeback story, Dan.
Exactly.
The CEO is one of the missing people.
Really?
Yeah.
That's why you build a business with infrastructure so you can do stuff and then walk away and then have the business run itself.
How would you run a business?
Like that.
I
Build
would
it
love,
up and
I
then-
would love to run a business like that. I wish I could create one.
I mean, there was a pandemic, so
Yeah,
it's hard to...
Pandemic.
Like
time
building a
and
plane mid-flight, some say.
Yeah.
Jessica, you're fascinated by which details? Because
All of it. I mean, I think I talked a little bit about this on Golick and Smetty this week. Check out Golick and Smetty wherever you get your podcasts. My show with Mike Golick. Well, first 15 minutes of the show, we talked about this a bit. There's a subsection of people, I think specifically young girls who grew up in the 90s around the time that Titanic came out that are obsessed with the Titanic. This is a thing that I know a lot of people who are just obsessed with the wreckage of the Titanic, the movie The Titanic, all of the things about the Titanic, the making of the Titanic. And it's like when something that you are or were obsessed with when you were a little kid comes back into the public and you know a little bit about it, you kind of latch onto it. And then I also think there's just a subsection of people that it truly doing this is unfathomable to them. So like the human interest level is just peaking off the charts. And to me, a former Titanic enthusiast, I went to the Titanic exhibit at the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry. Wow. Fantastic exhibit. They give you a little card. Those are my bona fides. They give you a little card. I was 8 years old. It has a person's name on it, and you walk in and you go through the exhibit, and then at the end you find out if your little person on your card survived or not.
Did you?
Everyone in my family died except my sisters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Billy,
That's
Mike,
interesting.
Mike thinks of himself as the world's foremost Titanic expert. I think we're going to have a Titanic off between Mike and Jessica.
Can I ask a question? Why do we romanticize the Titanic? It was a giant
It's a
bust.
great question.
It sucked. It was a tiny. If you look at it by cruise ship standards now, it was a tiny garbage ship. It didn't even last one sailing. Crashed into an iceberg. Which how did that even happen?
Overrated.
And it was overrated. It was a disaster.
Famous
The
only
reason-
because
Why
it
don't we?
failed.
Why
The
don't we
reason why-
romanticize the Hindenburg?
Well, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, it is the
It was
idle
a
folly of
disaster.
the
The
wealthy.
Titanic was.
Complete disaster. One of the biggest maritime disasters in human history, but also the
I could literally build a cruise ship that goes on as many successful sailings as the Titanic,
The-
if not more.
Billy, the
It
Titanic.
just have to be one.
We do this all the time,
It
though.
was lost for decades.
Yeah,
it was found
please.
very recently. So the appeal, the mystery of the Titanic and what happened and how it crashed and everything like that, it's all somewhat recent history, right? And a number of extremely wealthy, famous people at the time died. It is in the pilot episode of Downton Abbey. They find out that their cousin, I believe one of the heirs to Downton Abbey, died on the Titanic. And it was a monumental thing at the time period because it was an unsinkable ship that sank.
We always revel when the
Allegedly.
biggest thing fails, be it the Titanic because it was the biggest and best.
Here comes the joke.
What?
Or the heat.
The
Or
Hindenburg?
Mike Ryan.
No, I was gonna go with the Brooklyn Nets and Quibi. Do you remember Quibi?
I signed up for like a free trial of Quibi, and then it was like you have 6 months of Quibi, or I may have paid.
Please don't
something.
undercut my jokes.
Well, I'm just saying. I
no,
signed
I
up
was
for
talking to Dan. I want to hear your Quibi story.
Well, it went away right away, and I had a quibble with
I have
Quibi.
I have much tighter windows over here, and you can't just suck the air out of my punchlines.
It's a tough
Especially with the
seat.
wrong
Got
team.
it.
Welcome to Billy's world. Jessica, you were also sped up there for reasons that are both enthusiasm and nobody gets to talk very long around here.
Oh, yes, that also. I want to put this out there because it sounds like I'm morbidly curious about this like tragedy. I am. Don't get me wrong, but I also it is a tragedy. It is very sad.
Not yet.
Not yet. Hold on.
Not yet.
What do
It's
you-
currently a mystery. It hasn't turned to tragedy yet.
I'm hopeful that
Are the
everyone,
latest reports right?
I don't-
That there's
Yes.
a pinging sound that
Yes.
there's people can hear something.
Yeah, 30-minute intervals, and then 4 hours later, they caught pinging from presumably inside the hull. This is the military operations because we've mobilized a lot of Coast Guard resources and military resources. The thing about all of this is they find the sub, and then it gets complicated.
It's bolted from the outside. So yeah, these people on board can't, even if they've come up to the surface, they can't get themselves out of it, which is also horrifying.
And you can't just bring them up quickly. So say they find them with 2 hours to spare. It takes 2 hours to safely get them up to the surface. What happens?
The whole thing is, it's bizarre. It's insane. And
I'm asking Dan because he read a book on the bends.
oh yeah, let us know.
Well, the fascination of shipwrecks. I will look up the title of the
they're
book.
they're at cabin pressure though inside the hull. They don't have, they're at sea level pressure.
It's pressurized. Right? It's like going on an airplane. Like you don't get there.
Finding them, as Mike Ryan is saying, is a source of great relief that only begins now the rescue, because there are an assortment of difficulties. You can't just move somebody from inside that vessel into another chamber and be safe. Like you can't at that distance of water. It's just most materials can't exist back there at that depth. That's why submarines are made of some of the stuff they're made of.
And how do you grab it? How do you bring it to the surface? Someone going to swim out and hook it like Wayne Knight in Jurassic Park? No, they're not going to do that. Do we have like some sort of scooper mechanism on one of our subs that can grab it? How do we bring it to the surface once we locate this tomb?
Because that's what we're fascinated by, right? It's like because I'm not comfortable with it either, Jessica. The examining of the mortality of all this while the people are still alive and losing breathable air.
Yeah, possibly alive. I think I'm most fascinated by what Billy was saying earlier, which is having this much money in cash to spend on anything you want, and you want to go on an experimental submarine vessel to the bottom of the ocean with it.
You got to buy Twitter instead.